Before we get into the content of this episode, I have got to give a shout out to two BYU guys who got awesome deals, two friends of the podcast. This past week, Tyler Algier signed a 2-year deal with the Cardinals. I believe it was 2 years. And then Kairos Tonga signed with the Chiefs. And I'm hoping this is a good omen for the guys we talked about last week because our first two episodes, Kairos Tonga, Tyler Algier. I'm hoping Jack Kelly and Chase Roberts get those awesome deals and are drafted well come April. So you never know what'll happen. We got good vibes here on the Beyond the Y podcast. I really love both of those signings. I don't know if you guys saw my X post on Tyler Algier. They had worked out the deal with James Conner like the day before. I think they signed Tyler Algier. And I actually am okay with that. As you guys remember, when I gave my top 5 landing spots, I believe the Cardinals were my fifth landing spot for Tyler Algier. And I stand by that. I think if he had gotten more of a starting role, a role in which he wouldn't have had to compete for reps as much, I think he would have been even more successful. But I still think he's going to find a lot of success in Arizona just because, and no shade against James Conner, he is not Bijan Robinson, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think it could even be as soon as next season, but to play it safe, I'll say 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 seasons. I think Tyler Algier is going to be the face of the run game in Arizona. You heard it here first. He has the resume. He's got the skill sets. I think James Conner will eventually work his way out, and he won't want to compete with that. And I don't blame him because Tyler Algier is a baller. And I'm really, really excited to see what he does in Arizona. So I love Kairos with the Chiefs too. I got a lot of Chiefs fans in my family, a lot of Chiefs fans who listen to the podcast. And speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, look who was in attendance to watch BYU men's basketball in the Big 12 tournament this past week. Coach Andy Reid. It is always awesome to see him in royal blue. He is fantastic. I love that guy. And in terms of today's episode, it got me thinking, where does Andy Reid stack up in the list of all-time great NFL head coaches? Because we've all seen Andy Reid's success over the past several seasons. There's no denying that. There's no denying the talent that he's been able to draft and the talent he's been able to facilitate, even throughout his time coaching before he was a head coach, with Green Bay and stuff like that. He is a fantastic head coach. And so today's episode, we're going to be breaking down where does Andy Reid stack up in the list of all-time great NFL head coaches. We're going to make a list. We're going to break down some of the other all-time greats. Where does Coach Reid stack up with them? It's going to be a good one. So as I considered the criteria for head coaches here, I had to break down in my mind what I thought was important in a head coach. So I'm going to list a few things out here, and you may disagree. That's totally okay. I actually do want to hear it. Sound off in the comments if you disagree. But this is going to be my criteria for what makes an NFL head coach great. And number one for me is going to be getting those wins. And by wins, I mean Super Bowl wins. I weighted coaches with Super Bowl wins very heavily here because think about it from a fan's perspective. All of you guys are fans. We're all BYU fans out here. I'm sure you guys follow BYU players into the NFL, specifically with football. Because you're listening to this podcast, I know you do. So we are all fans of some NFL team out there who we want to go and ultimately win a Super Bowl. I've loved seeing Coach Reid get Super Bowl wins over the past several years. Super Bowl wins are important not only to the team, but to the fan base. And coming at it from a fan's perspective, I weighted that super heavily. Another thing that I weighted pretty heavily was longevity. Consistent success over time. Having short bursts of success is really great, but I love seeing coaches who can be consistent over time. Also, overall playoff success, I'm going to weigh heavier than regular season success, which I'll weigh heavier than just simple playoff appearances. I decided as I considered these guys that all of them have developed a certain legacy. All of them have established their legacy, and I think it would be unfair to count that against these coaches because, let's be honest, to be a great NFL head coach, you're going to leave your mark and you're going to establish that legacy. So having an above and beyond legacy are going to help these head coaches, but ultimately not necessarily having a crazy high legacy, crazy high mark that you leave on the team and the franchise and the sport. It's not going to count against these guys as much. So while that is it can be a bonus in their category, it's not necessarily going to be something that I take away if it's not exactly their strong suit. So there were a few names that I came up with. Obviously, you guys are going to be sitting there listening to this saying, well, you left out this guy, you left out this guy, you left out this guy. This is not an overall encompassing list. I picked 6 other NFL head coaches who I believe rank in the top 7 of all-time NFL head coaches with Andy Reid. So, spoiler alert, Andy Reid's at least top 7. I think there are a lot of guys who are top 10 but not top 7 in my mind, and we can list a few of those out. I think I'll probably steer clear of that just because I want to focus on how Andy Reid stacks up against these guys who are ultimately once in a lifetime NFL head coaches, the kinds of NFL head coaches that current franchises still dream about having. And are these kinds of head coaches that we'll ever see again? Probably not, but I would love to be hopeful and optimistic for the future because I think the sport is has a lot of room to grow, but I think it's only getting better. So, okay, we're gonna jump right into it. This is gonna be my ranking from number 6 to number 1, leaving Andy Reid out. So I'm going to introduce these guys and explain why they're all-time greats, and then we'll go deep into Andy Reid, why he's an all-time great, and how these guys stack up against Andy Reid and vice versa. So before we get into all the NFL head coaches here, I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to Andy Reid. I'm sure most of you guys know who he is. It's hard not to. He is the best NFL head coach in the league right now. So not that you're unfamiliar with him, but I wanted to give him a little bio here. Andy Reid, as a player, played offensive tackle. He transferred to BYU from Glendale Community College. He medically redshirted in 1978. He played the 79 and 1980 seasons. In 1980, they won the Holiday Bowl. Teammates kind of relate that Andy Reid didn't play as much, but he was an analytical guy, and he was always picking Coach Lavelle Edwards' brain. I mean, Lavelle Edwards is one of the great all-time college football head coaches, an offensive mastermind, developed so many guys, developed a legacy of BYU, and so Andy Reid got a lot of that from Lavelle Edwards, and I would attribute Lavelle Edwards to much of his success. Lavelle Edwards obviously noticed this. It led him to suggest Andy Reid go into coaching as a career. And after his graduation from BYU in 1981, he worked as a graduate assistant on BYU's football coaching staff. He worked with Mike Holmgren at that time, who was working with the quarterbacks. And 9 years later, Mike Holmgren would hire Andy Reid as an assistant offensive line and tight ends coach for the Green Bay Packers. This was coincidentally the same year they got Brett Favre in Green Bay. So it was the start of a lot of success for Andy Reid. Later, the Philadelphia Eagles would hire Coach Reid as head coach in 1999, and he's been head coach ever since. Kansas City hired him in 2013 to be their head coach, where he still is now. So one of the best guys to come out of BYU. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about amazing players, coaches, just all around people who have come out of BYU, and very few are going to be as good or better than Coach Andy Reid here. So I'm really excited to dive into it. Okay, my head coaches list, kind of switch gears here a little bit. We're going to start at number 6, go all the way to number 1. We're leaving Coach Reid out of this list. I'm just explaining my top 6 minus Coach Reid and why they're all-time NFL head coaching greats. So, number 6, I've got Tom Landry, who spent his career with the Dallas Cowboys. Tom Landry had 20 straight winning seasons. He was dominant pre-merger, NFL and AFL merger. He was a 2-time Super Bowl champ. He won Super Bowl 6 and Super Bowl 12. He went on a crazy 20-year, just generational run here. He only missed the playoffs twice in that 20 years. He had 7 playoffs appearances in which he was eliminated in the first game. So he was eliminated by, actually, ironically, it's the Los Angeles Rams every time. 76 in the divisional round, 79 in the divisional round, 83 in the wild card, and then 85 in the divisional round. In 29 seasons, he had 9 losing or tied records there. He had one season where the record was exactly 500. But it was the first 6 and the last 3. So that 20 seasons in there, it were straight winning records, and it was a dominant run there. He did only win 2 Super Bowls, and so that's part of the reason why I've got him at number 6 here. Because in my mind, like I said at the beginning, great coaches are going to get you to the Super Bowl to win it. And you'll notice that for these guys, I'm not going to talk a lot about Super Bowl appearances, though I think that's important too because everybody likes to see their team go to the Super Bowl. However, for most of you out there, you probably know the feeling of seeing your team go to the Super Bowl and lose. And so, in my mind, that's the equivalent of you've made the playoffs. That's the accreditation we're going to give you for that. Because we want to see Super Bowl championships. We want to see you be world champs. We want to see the ring on your finger. We want to see you going to Disneyland. The whole celebration that comes with the Super Bowl and for the fan base and for the team. We want to see the whole thing. So Tom Landry, I got him at number 6. Number 5, I think a lot of guys compare these two. Chuck Noll, who coached for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy went on a generational run from in the 1970s, and this is a legacy that Pittsburgh Steelers fans talk about to this day. I mean, if you talk to a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, they're going to talk about how they have the most Super Bowl wins, and it's something that Chuck Noll started. He's the reason behind it. He's a 4-time Super Bowl champ. He won Super Bowls 9, 10, 13, and 14. He established that Steelers dynasty, and I put him ahead of Tom Landry because he did do more just overall, and he did it within less time. Like I said, I like to see that sustained success, but overall I thought Tom Landry actually had less success, even though Chuck Noll had it in less time. So I think the argument could be made for Tom Landry that he was dominant for twice as long, but with less Super Bowls. Again, that's why I give Chuck Noll the nod. That, and after the win in Super Bowl 14 in the 1979 season, think in your mind, how many playoff wins would Chuck Noll, the legendary head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, have after his 4th Super Bowl win? Well, the answer would be 4 total playoff appearances total and 2 playoff wins for his last 12 seasons. So he fell off pretty hard there. The whole team did. He was in the league a total of 23 years. And so really his highlight are those few years right in there where he was winning Super Bowls like crazy. So, okay, number 5, I got Chuck Noll from Pittsburgh. As a side note for these guys, Tom Landry is actually number 5 in all-time wins at 270. Chuck Noll is number 8 in all-time wins at 209. Those metrics will be important later on when we kind of do our final rankings and compare him to Coach Andy Reid, because all-time wins, in my mind, establish a little bit of that legacy, but they establish overall success in the period of time that they were head coaches. So keep that in mind. Tom Landry at number 5, Chuck Noll at number 8 in all-time wins category. For my 4th best coach of all time, excluding Andy Reid, I've got Vince Lombardi, who coached for the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know before everybody gets crazy about this, I know Vince Lombardi was amazing, and his legacy cannot be overstated. However, as I did a little bit of research, not a little bit, more than a little bit of research on Vince Lombardi here, I came to the conclusion that Vince Lombardi's legacy is his main defining factor here. In fact, I don't know if any of these guys have established their legacy quite like Vince Lombardi did. I mean, we're talking about the important thing being Super Bowl wins here. Well, they named the Super Bowl trophy the Lombardi Trophy after Vince Lombardi. And Green Bay Packers fans are going to be mad about this. This was all pre-merger. This was all pre-NFL and AFL merger. And for those who don't know, the American Football League was calling them the little brother to the National Football League before the merger is kind of an understatement there. The NFL was way better than the AFL. And so pre-merger, getting Super Bowl wins like in Super Bowl 1 and 2, which are his two post-Super Bowl era Super Bowl wins, to me, it while it matters because Green Bay wants to see that, and obviously it's a Super Bowl era, so we're counting it, I think that's fantastic, but it's not in the same brand of football that we're seeing today, or even that we saw in the 1970s when Chuck Noll was dominant. So Vince Lombardi, absolutely amazing coach, established a winning legacy, especially for Green Bay. However, 2 Super Bowls, number 1 and 2, pre-merger, weighs less in my mind, and I'll give a shout out to it, but this is probably one of the last things I'll say about it. 3 NFL championships, pre-Super Bowl era and pre-merger, obviously. He won the NFL championship in 61, 62, and 65. So keep that in mind. Professional football was just a lot different back then. So I'm trying to be objective with that one. There's just less competition there. That's a legacy pick. That legacy is going to weigh heavily on Vince Lombardi there, and why he's at my pick for number 4 right there. So, all right, number 3, I've got Bill Walsh, who coached the San Francisco 49ers. He coached for 10 seasons and got 3 Super Bowl wins in 10 seasons. Again, would like to see more sustained success over time, more consistency. But for those 10 seasons, 3 Super Bowl wins, Super Bowl 16, Super Bowl 19, Super Bowl 23. He was very dominant in a short period of time. He only missed the playoffs 3 times in those 10 seasons. And the biggest thing for Bill Walsh probably is that he established the West Coast style offense out there in San Francisco. He was an amazing head coach and revolutionized the game in many aspects. He was a big key contributor in drafting one of our favorite people, Steve Young, to the San Francisco 49ers. Some would argue that actually created a little bit of controversy for San Francisco, but shoot, we love Steve Young, so we love that. Now, I think the criticisms for Bill Walsh are longevity, like we've talked about. He only coached for 10 seasons. He admittedly wishes that he had coached longer. I think had he gone a little bit longer, his name would be up a little bit higher for me in this conversation. The other thing is he only had 1 playoff win where he didn't ultimately go on to win the Super Bowl. He had 3 consecutive playoff appearances without a single playoff win. That was in 1985, 1986, 1987. So definitely consider that metric when you're considering all-time greats. For the short amount of time that he was an NFL head coach in the league, it was dominant at times and then playoff appearances without being able to pull into the driveway. So take that into consideration there. Moving on to number 2 in our Sans Andy Reid list here, we've got Don Shula, who coached the Miami Dolphins. It should be noted he actually coached the Baltimore Colts pre-merger in 1970 when they merged the National Football League and the American Football League to create the National Football League with the National Football Conference, the American Football Conference. He went to coach the Miami Dolphins, where he remained for the rest of his career. Look, the biggest argument for Don Shula being at the top here, he is number one in all-time wins. He has 347. That's over 33 seasons, so take that for what you will. That's a long time. But he was dominant, or at least successful, in my mind, 3 to 4 different eras of football. Because he was great when he was with the Baltimore Colts, too. He lost to Joe Namath and the New York Jets in Super Bowl III. But, again, I'm not really considering Super Bowl appearances. I'm just counting Super Bowl wins. However, again, pre-merger, that's a big deal. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, Super Bowl 7 and 8. Those of you who know your football history know that actually one of those wins means a lot more than any other Super Bowl win in history, because in 1972, Don Shula coached the Miami Dolphins to a perfect season all the way through the playoffs. He is the only one to have done that. The closest would be Tom Brady, who led the New England Patriots, but lost in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. Look, Don Shula is the only one to pull it in the driveway in that aspect, and there's something to be said for that. That was a different era of football. That was a competitive time in football, but a perfect season speaks volumes. It speaks to his legacy. It speaks to his coaching talent. And then the fact that he coached 33 seasons, I mean, it's incredible. Thinking about the 26 seasons that he was with the Miami Dolphins, he only missed the playoffs 8 times. 75, 76, 77, 80, 86, 87, 88, 89, 91, and 93. Meaning, yes, he made the playoffs in his final season in 1995. I think that speaks to his legacy and to his overall longevity and consistency over time like crazy. He's got it all. He's got the longevity, he's got the legacy, he's got his consistency over the career, and he's got super competitive wins. The only thing that I'm holding against him is he only has 2 Super Bowl wins. Yes, one of them being a big one, but what would put him higher and probably number one would be the fact that he could have more Super Bowl wins over that time. The Dolphins are a franchise who obviously would love to see more Super Bowl wins, despite them knowing darn well that they had that perfect 72 season. So anyways, okay, number 1, we've got Bill Belichick for the New England Patriots. We already talked about the Patriots a little bit. Should be noted that Bill Belichick was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns from 1991 to 1995. Nobody does very well with the Browns, so we won't hold that against him too much, but in the year 2000, Bill Belichick era in New England started. He ended up racking up 6 Super Bowl wins in Super Bowl 36, 38, 39, 49, 51, and 53. In my mind, Bill Belichick has had 2 separate Hall of Fame careers in 2 decades. I mean, this guy he's different than all of these other guys. None of those other guys had 2 separate Hall of Fame careers. I think Don Shula is probably your closest argument just because he was going for so long, but still his Super Bowl wins came very early. Bill Belichick had 3 pretty early and then 3 later on in his career, and so 2 Hall of Fame careers in 2 decades is pretty darn impressive. From the years 2000 to 2023, he only missed the playoffs 6 times. He is number 1 all-time in playoff wins with 31 wins over 29 seasons, meaning, yes, he's averaging more than 1 playoff win each season he was the head coach. He's number 2 all-time in NFL wins behind Don Shula at 333. Obviously, if he would have kept coaching the same amount of time Don Shula did, I think he could have caught up to him. But we all remember the end of Bill Belichick's time in New England. It wasn't going great, and he kind of fell off there. Not kind of. He did fall off at the end of his career there for the New England Patriots, though, of course, he's the current head coach for the North Carolina Tar Heels. So, look, nobody has more Super Bowls. Nobody have more playoff wins. In my mind, again, greatest of all time, head coach Bill Belichick. That's my top 6 minus Andy Reid. Let's get into why I think Andy Reid deserves to be in this list of at least top 7 NFL head coaches of all time. He coached for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. He has 2 separate careers with both teams. You don't see that very much. Don Shula, again, he had his career at the Baltimore Colts. However, that was pre-merger. All of Andy Reid's stuff has been at least post-merger, but obviously a lot of his success has been had more recently. He is the only coach with that level of success on 2 teams. He's led the Kansas City dynasty of the late 2010s and early 2020s. That's the dynasty a lot of kids today are growing up with. Obviously, I grew up a little bit more with the New England Patriots dynasty, but I can appreciate the Chiefs dynasty that they have going on right now. It's different than stuff that we've seen before, and they will continue to be dominant. I'll tell you that much. We haven't seen the last of Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and all those guys in Kansas City out there. He's got 3 Super Bowls, all with Kansas City. He didn't win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. He won Super Bowl 54, 57, and 58. He's 4th all-time in NFL wins at 307. Again, he's going to continue to build on that because he's the only coach on this list who's still active. And then he's 2nd all-time in playoff wins behind Bill Belichick at 28 all-time playoff wins. And again, he's not done being in the playoffs. I know they missed the playoffs this last season, but he's not done. He's going to continue to chase that. I think by the time he's done with his career, I think we'll be seeing Andy Reid at the top of that all-time playoffs wins list. So, Andy Reid is fantastic. He absolutely deserves to be on this list. He's still going, and that's a huge thing for me. He's still going. This is a legacy coach that we have in the NFL today, and he's still going strong. He's one of the greatest offensive minds of all time. I think you put him alongside Bill Walsh in that same conversation. And again, he got it from one of the greats, Lavelle Edwards, out at BYU in college. He learned a lot of that from him and just has continued to develop that skill of offensive strategy. And the Chiefs are really fun to watch no matter who you are, even if you hate the Chiefs. Okay, here's how I'm going to stack up Andy Reid versus these other 6 guys that we're talking. We're going to play a little game called Him or Andy Reid. So I'm going to say one of the coaches that we've talked about, and I'm going to pick him or Andy Reid. So starting at the bottom, we'll work all the way to the top. Number 6, Tom Landry. Him or Andy Reid? I pick Andy Reid. This isn't a hard one for me. Number 5, all-time wins versus number 2. 20 playoff wins over 29 seasons to 28 playoff wins over 27 seasons. He's got more Super Bowl wins, 3-2. Andy Reid is more consistent, and Andy Reid will be better for longer than Tom Landry was. Not a knock at Tom Landry. It's supposed to be hype for Andy Reid. I think he's better than Tom Landry, and I'd take him over Tom Landry. So, okay, number 5, Chuck Noll. I take Andy Reid again. He's got less Super Bowl wins to this moment in his career, but he's more consistent over a longer period of time. I would rather have sustained success over concentrated success like Chuck Noll had. We already covered that when we talked about Chuck Noll. Those 4 Super Bowls, incredible. Andy Reid's going to get his 4th. Believe me, he will. And he's been competitive in the playoffs for a long time now. So that's what I'd want in a head coach. And then matching up the statistics, number 8, all-time wins versus number 2. 16 playoff wins over 23 seasons to, again, 28 playoff wins over 27 seasons. Andy Reid also is averaging more than 1 playoff win per season he's been head coach, which is a huge deal because obviously none of these coaches made the playoffs every single year they were a head coach. So that's a big deal. Okay, number 4, Vince Lombardi. Again, not a hard one, not a knock at Vince Lombardi, but I'm taking Andy Reid. Obviously, Vince Lombardi has the leg up on Andy Reid as far as legacy goes. We've established that. Vince Lombardi is a legacy guy for sure. However, Andy Reid has more competitive Super Bowl wins. Emphasis on competitive there 3-0. I'm standing by that. And he dominated in a better era of football over a longer period of time. That's just the truth. It was a different era of football. It's hard to compare. It's almost impossible to compare, I'd say. It's almost an apples to oranges comparison. However, if you're asking me who I'd want to coach my NFL team right now, if I'm starting a franchise between prime Vince Lombardi and prime Andy Reid, I'm taking prime Andy Reid all day. All day. And yeah, like I said, that part of that domination is just that dominating post-merger. That's a big thing for me because it's literally combining more teams. It's doubling the size of the league. That's a big deal. So, again, Packers fans are going to hate me for this one. I don't hate Vince Lombardi, not at all. He's an old school head coach, one of the greats. I'm taking Andy Reid. Okay, this next one is tricky. Bill Walsh. These are two very similar guys in a lot of ways. Their resumes are different. They're both offensive minds. They're both offensive greats. Bill Walsh established that West Coast offense, as we already talked about. Andy Reid is very innovative in his own ways. But because of the difference in resumes, I'm taking Andy Reid over Bill Walsh. Reason being, Andy Reid has been and will be dominant over a longer period of time. The thing that hurts Bill Walsh the most is the fact that he only coached 10 seasons. That is hard as far as his stacking up in this lineup. I think being number 3 minus Andy Reid is pretty dang good considering the fact that he was only there for 10 seasons. If he had, consider a world in which Bill Walsh had coached more seasons with the 49ers. Well, I think he would stack up a lot better. The conversation could be a lot different. But obviously, all-time wins and playoff wins aren't even close when Andy Reid's been going as long as he has. The resumes are just different. And that's, again, not to say that I don't like Bill Walsh. I actually really like Bill Walsh. But as far as legacy, longevity, consistency over time, I'm taking Andy Reid. Okay, number 2, Don Shula. I don't think this will surprise anybody. I am not going to be a biased fan here. Don Shula is the better head coach. I'm taking him. I don't think it's controversial at all. Number 1 versus number 4 all-time wins. Don Shula was dominant in more eras of football. Like I said, probably about 3 to 4. He accomplished the impossible with that perfect season in 1972. Andy Reid probably, he already does, but he will have more Super Bowl wins, which that might continue the conversation. Say Andy Reid gets his 4th. In my mind, that probably continues the conversation, but I still don't know how many Super Bowls Andy Reid would necessarily need to win to put him over Don Shula. Probably like 5, honestly, to put him over Don Shula, because Don Shula was just that good for that long. So right now it's not close. I'm taking Don Shula over Andy Reid. Not a shot at Andy Reid. Just think that Don Shula's got that resume. And then number 1, obviously, Bill Belichick. I'm taking him over Andy Reid. Not controversial again. It's 6 to 3 Super Bowl wins there. Number 2 to number 4 all-time wins. Number 1 to number 2 in playoff wins. So it's Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. Look, I actually think these guys are kind of similar as well. They're different head coaches. But if Andy Reid's career had the kind of success I think Chiefs fans and BYU fans and Andy Reid fans like myself want to see out of him, I think these two are definitely a lot more competitive in this conversation. But as I've said, Bill Belichick had 2 Hall of Fame careers. I don't think there's really an argument that Andy Reid has had 2 Hall of Fame careers, though he did have a lot of success in Philadelphia. But due to that fact, Bill Belichick having 2 separate Hall of Fame careers, I give the edge to Bill Belichick over Andy Reid. Again, I don't think that surprises anybody. So, to recap, top 7 NFL head coaches of all time in Garrison's opinion here. We got number 7, Tom Landry. Number 6, Chuck Noll. Number 5, Vince Lombardi. Number 4, Bill Walsh. I put Coach Andy Reid at number 3 head coaches of all time in this moment. Number 2, Don Shula. Number 1, Bill Belichick. I would love to see Andy Reid continue his success. Best of luck to him. And again, as we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that we're a little bit of a good luck charm here because, again, Kyra's signing with the Chiefs, Tyler signing with the Cardinals, excuse me. That's a big deal. Andy, I hope this next season goes well for you, and go Cougars. So, guys, thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate all the support that the podcast has been getting. If you want to hear about a player, a coach, a team, you tell me about it. Send me a DM on any one of our socials. Leave a comment in the podcast. If you're a fan of the podcast and you appreciate the content that I'm putting out, it always really helps when you share it out to those who you think may be interested. But on that note, we'll see you guys next week.